Good afternoon and welcome to General Services Public Works Committee. Today is May 9th, 2022, and I welcome everyone who's here today with us, Councilmember Wood and Councilmember English. I'll call this meeting to order. Today we have 4 agenda items, and the first one is a request for approval of the destruction of records. And with us today is our Director for Municipal Services, Renata McLeod.
This is one of the housekeeping matters that comes to you occasionally. According to the city-adopted Records Retention Manual, any of the destruction of records needs to come forward with council approval and be approved via a resolution. So we have a couple items that have been brought forward since the last request. We have vehicle sales logs at the police department, and those are from 2015 to 2019. They're temporary records, so they're only required to be kept for 2 years. These are internal documents, and they are no longer necessary. We have some electronic public records requests. Again, those are forms that are filled out for public records requests, temporary, only required to be kept for 2 years. And that's from 2018 and 19. Then we have some video redaction records requests held by Municipal Services. This is where we take the original video and redact anything that is not releasable. And they're gigantic files sitting on a hard drive. We filled up one. We're working our way into a second one. And they have passed the appeal period of time. And again, those are temporary records. The original videos are still on file through Viper at the police department. So those are all records prior to 2020. So we're requesting authorization to move forward with those destructions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Christy.
Thank you. Thank you, Renata. If you could just verify that all of those public records requests were filled.
Oh, yes, absolutely. According to Idaho code, we have 3 days to respond to a public records request and have an additional 7-day extension. So without some legal reason, we have to fill those within 10 days. They've been completed, yep.
Thank you.
It sounds like this is, appropriate routine things, and in this day and age, I can appreciate the digital storage. I mean, space is money. Same thing if it's on digital and you have to archive and do all of that. So, it's appropriate, and that's why it's in code of how and when and why we can turn those records over. So, with that, I would make a motion to recommend that the council approve the destruction of records in accordance with city records retention schedule.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 2, and this is a request approval of public comment policy. With us today, Renata, welcome back, and Randy Adams from our city attorney.
Thank you, and I'm really bringing this forward for a council discussion opportunity. I'm hopeful that we'll move this forward to the next subcommittee, so it wasn't my intention to move it forward direct to council unless that's something you guys decide you want to do today, but I wanted to have each committee the opportunity to vet it and provide feedback before we bring a final draft forward to full council. So if you recall, in 2020, we brought forward a draft policy. It was brought to both subcommittees, and there was discussion, and then was not brought forward during that time. At that time, we discussed confirming the 3-minute maximum for each public comment, and that's general public comment. There's still Idaho Code regulations for public hearings that are a little bit unique to whoever's the proponent or opponent of those items. But this would be for general. And other discussion related to whether it should be related to a current agenda item or not. Also, we discussed whether there should be residents of the city of Coeur d'Alene, and the opportunity has arisen to add in that no more than 30 minutes during a meeting shall be dedicated toward public comment. The other thing we wanted to bring up that's not in the staff report is the requirement for the sign-up sheet in the back of the room so that we can see the proper spelling of those names and addresses of where they're located at. But again, this is absolutely for council discussion. We've not found in the city records at any point in time that we've adopted a public records policy. So this will be the first one finalized for us. And There were no such examples in other communities in North Idaho. However, there are several examples throughout the United States of public comment policy, and I have attached a draft for the beginning of those discussions. So I will stand for questions, but give this the opportunity for you guys to dialogue and provide staff some direction of what you'd like us to bring forward.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Renata. And I think you meant to say there's no public comment policy. You said public records.
Oh, sorry, my two
All right.
subjects blend together. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, that is correct.
Well, you know, policy is important for guidance, and so I'm not opposed to a policy. I think that, of course, the details will matter mostly, and I think council will probably have a really good discussion on this. For me personally, I looked at some of the proposals. I probably wouldn't be able to support the 30-minute proposal, even though there is a caveat that the mayor or the chair could allow additional time. What I have found through my years of serving on boards and commissions and council is sometimes the public wants to talk longer than 30 minutes, and if you cut it off at 30 minutes, somebody doesn't get to speak. So I'm happy to sit for however. One of the city discussions at one point, we did 6 hours. I was in the audience speaking, but the council sat for 6 hours. And so, you know, sometimes it's just that important that we listen until everyone's done speaking. But I'm happy to have that discussion with council. The other thing is I think there's maybe a little bit of concern about restricting it just to city residents. And I'm interested in hearing what the rest of council thinks when we do discuss it as a full body. I had to think about what would I want to do. Do I want to drive to Rathdrum as a Coeur d'Alene resident, and do I want to speak to their council on a Rathdrum issue? Probably not very often, but there could be a circumstance, I guess, if I worked in Rathdrum and something the council was doing would affect the business where I worked, then I probably would want an opportunity to speak. And I don't know if we would flesh out where if you have property here, if you have a business here, but even if you're employed here, I would think there's going to be circumstances where they would want to speak to us. And so I'm not really keen on restricting that. I do think that keeping it to the agenda is reasonable. And this is why. We should probably have town hall meetings where anyone can come and speak on any topic. I'm happy to work with council to do that. Our meetings that we have twice a month are business meetings held in public. They're not public meetings. So I would like to focus on the business of the council. I also believe that any resident can contact the mayor's office or a council member and ask for an item to be discussed, and that can go through the normal process of requesting to be on the agenda. So I don't think that it shuts down discussion. I think it helps the council focus on the business on the agenda. So those are just my ideas on this so far. But I look forward to the full council discussion.
Thank you. Dan?
Well, I think it's, this is something we need to address. I think like a lot of things in life, as it goes on, gets a little more complicated, you need a bit of a rule book, and I guess I've got generally, I think these were all good points and generally supportive of that, but at least at my initial point, probably have a little different viewpoint on a couple of them than Christie, but again, this is why we will need to have the full council meeting. At this point, actually, I feel pretty strong that in terms of public comment, I think it would be appropriate to have that just be from city residents. Now, we are talking about public comments on the stage, on the video, during a meeting. Everybody has a right to all kinds of other kinds of communication. I mean, they can send something to us, written forms and emails and phone calls. But I think in terms of our meetings, that's a resource and something for in my mind, there are certain things that come with citizenship, and in this case, we're talking about citizenship of the city. For a lot of years, as I've alluded to before, I was election guy, and I see this a bit like some of the discussions that we would have on election issues, and we would have folks who, oh boy, they own property here, maybe they work here, they own multiple properties, but they don't physically live here, but they think that pretty strongly sometimes that they should be able to vote in the elections because maybe it's going to, and maybe it truly is going to make financial impact on them. But at some points, there are some defining lines of if you've chosen to make your home here and invest, there are certain things that come along with it. And again, it's not ruling out all kinds of communication, but at least at this point, where I would be on leaning towards no, I think it's appropriate in this case to have it for our city residents. On the other matter, and we talked a little bit about this, about, restricting it to just the agenda items in some business. I still struggle with that. I feel like, and yeah, there are different ways they can do it, but I think of the times when somebody has kind of got the gumption up and maybe they've tried a few things or talked to staff, but they got the gumption up to come down here in front of all of us and make a statement about something or ask a genuine question, and it might be the fence thing or the dog thing or something. And so I guess at this point, I'm not sure that I'd want to hard and fast that it's somebody somehow thought of everything ahead of time that we should have on our agenda that should be pertinent to citizens. I would be leaning the other way on that one. One of the rules, let's see, Rule 9, prior to speaking, a member of the public shall state his true name and address for the record. Refusal to provide the name or address should be grounds for denying an opportunity, and I think that's very appropriate. I guess I also wondered if we find out afterwards, that somebody, oh no, they didn't give us their right name and address. I think that we need to, this is a starting point, and maybe this isn't the time that we have to worry about, consequences, but I think that something about that if somebody comes to us and says, oh no, that's not their name or something, again, that's something to maybe take a second look at. Also on the time period, 30 minutes, might be short for most of our meetings. That's probably good and all of that. And maybe it's a matter of with our scheduling that we really try to tune into that. I do appreciate that sometimes where people have issues that are in a time-sensitive nature, but I always feel bad for the people who just say, I just wanted to change my lot line or this or that or some kind of a property-related hearing that we go through all of this other hearing and they're having to wait there and the crowd thins out and then they get to do their things. So either in our management of the agendas that we put some of that, if we can, front end, or try not to have those kinds of things when we know it's going to be a hot topic. Because again, my default, I think 30 minutes for a meeting is probably good guidance, but I don't think I would want to have that written in stone. And then Rule 17 is a little bit, I guess, along the lines of somebody who doesn't give their true name or something, but person violating these rules and disrupting the meeting may be ejected from the meeting room by the mayor or the chair, given a warning, and I think that's appropriate. And again, this is something where, hopefully we don't even have to go there and find out, but at some point if you had somebody who, I guess if I call a habitual offender or something, if we're seeing that happen more than a couple of times, then, we might want to step up. But again, I think this generally, what I see is a good starting point. And, most of it I can go along with, but I'm glad you're going to have it at both of this committee level and then on a discussion night for the full council, and we probably won't want a 30-minute limit that night, because we'll probably have a lot of input. So anyway, that's my 2 or 3 cents. Sorry.
Thanks. And I'll share my thoughts as well at this point. Well, first of all, we all know communication is so valuable. And honestly, one of my highlights of being a council member is hearing from the community, either through emails, phone calls, or at the podium. So going back to communication, strong guidelines is important to everyone. So everybody knows the expectations on communicating with us and to the community in general. So a couple things that stood out is the 30 minutes per meeting. And I do like that we have the caveat that the mayor or chair may allow additional time. So I don't know if we can play around with that. That seems a little, I guess, strict. 30 minutes, we may not cover a lot of ground in 30 minutes. So I would just ask that we can take a look at that. Let's see. Rule number 3, public comment will only be accepted from Coeur d'Alene residents. I was brainstorming with the mayor earlier this morning on this, and I don't know the right balance with this one. I'd like to see it opened up beyond Coeur d'Alene residents. And the example that I have for that is the new school, the Elevate School, and they came and presented the school idea to us and shared their vision. Now, they could be placed on the agenda and have a formal presentation, or they could come in public comments. But let's say the principal, and I don't know if they do or do not live in the city of Coeur d'Alene, I don't want to limit activity such as that or communication such as that. So I don't know. I'd ask that we might get creative there as well. And then rule number 9, and this is just about mutual respect and respect for the process. That's rule number 9 for those of you who aren't looking at this with us. It's prior to speaking, a member of the public shall state his or her true name and address for the record. Refusal to provide the name or address shall be grounds for denying an opportunity to address council. And over the last several meetings, we've asked the community members to sign in and provide their name and address. And I have the honor of sitting right next to the mayor, so I see those sign-in sheets. And there's a lot of cartoon names and fake addresses put down. And frankly, I think that's demonstrates a huge lack of respect for the process. So I am in support of number 9. And number 14 is complaints about staff or others constitute a disruption of the orderly and fair conduct of a meeting by virtue of their relevance, tone, and or manner, and will not be allowed. I would suggest that we add a section in there on slander as well, to capture some of the recent comments and behaviors we've seen, and slander not being allowed. And that's all I've got right now. But I want to thank you for all your work on this, and I look forward to the full discussion at council.
Madam Chair, with that, I would make a motion to recommend that council, well, actually, we're just going to move this forward, right? I don't
Yeah,
need to do
so
anything.
at this point, we'll just move it to the next subcommittee unless you guys wanted to roll it forward direct to council.
No.
So,
No.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you for the feedback.
With that, we are on to item number 3, and this is a request for approval of the purchase of a Lemur, is it Lemur S drone? And we have Captain Dave Hagar with us from the police department. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome. Thank you, Chair and council members. What we bring before you today is a request to purchase a drone. And while we have drones, they're outside drones. I had the ability to witness this at work. One of the things that becomes an issue for us, and specifically SWAT situations, is people have a tendency to barricade doors and things like that. In the past few months, we've dealt with a person that set their house on fire. About 2 weeks ago, we dealt with a person who said that they had booby-trapped the house with explosives, which was verified to a certain extent by the family members who said they dabble in bombs and things of that nature. And when we try to go into a structure through traditional means, we could ignite those bombs, And quite honestly, even with the robots that are out there, some dirty clothes, a knocked over chair disables those and takes them out of play. This drone was specifically designed to be flown indoors, where the outside drones use GPS and you can set them on a course and it's kind of the set it and forget it. This is designed not to use the GPS, but basically shoots a laser down and figures out how far above is the floor. You have two-way communication and video that you can see inside. You could set this down on a flat object and be able to communicate with somebody in there. It's something that we haven't seen before. There's other drones that say they can fly inside, but they don't have the two-way communication or they don't have the video link. And this is the only one that's currently being made that does this. We saw it in action. The other unique part of this is it can break a window and enter the structure itself. And again, I can probably give you a half dozen just within the last year to 18 months examples of where this would have saved us time and been safe. We don't do SWAT operations like you see on TV where we go rushing in. We will wait for the opportunity to talk to somebody and get them to come out. But we don't want to risk the safety of the person that we're engaged with or the safety of the officers. The price of this is $14,995. We have vacancy savings right now, which will cover this. We're not asking for any additional spending. It can be taken care of in our budget, but I believe it's a small price to pay for the lives of the suspects that we deal with and the lives of the officers that we represent. So, willing to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I do, I can see the value of this, and it's one more tool, and I think, in this day and age, if we've got the chance for it, it makes sense. And I don't know if this is a Randy question, but what is our, as far as the purchase limits where you got to go out and, you get the 3 informal bids or the full bid, where are we in this price point?
This is below the requirement for any kind of quote or bid. It should be purchased in the best interest of the city.
If I may, there's a price reasonableness form where we can list those, that this is the only one that meets these criteria, and there are no other competitors that are able to meet the needs that we have.
Okay, so you took a look, that's the obvious one. If it's the only one out there, did you hear of it before? How did you happen to come across this one then?
It's actually a unique story. It's out of Western Washington. There was actually a young teen, I don't remember the exact age, very precocious. He's one of these that's going to graduate college before he turns 18. And he was interested in drones and this technology and went to his local SWAT team and said, what can I help you build that will meet your needs? And he teamed up with them and some investors. And this is relatively new to the market, and it meets all of those types of things. So instead of a company saying, hey, we think you need a tool, somebody came and said, what do you need from us? And then they built it. So we became aware of it that way, and they actually came out to Kootenai County and did a demonstration for us.
Great.
Christy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Captain Hager, you probably already have a couple of people on the SWAT team that are trained in drone technology as far as how to operate it.
We actually, instead of using the SWAT operators that are trained for that, we have some of our other officers that are kind of associate with and team up with the team. So they already have the experience in the bigger outside drones that we use for missing people and looking for suspects and things like that. So this would augment with that team. So we would bring them in to be able to use the same thing, and they would work with the SWAT team.
That's great. I think I've mentioned this before. When I started in law enforcement in 1990, I had a flashlight and a radio in the car. And so I'm with Dan on the whole idea that technology and the way it's evolved over the decades and what it can do to protect law enforcement and protect civilians from the worst possible outcome is just is amazing. And I fully support the tools that you need.
Thank you.
Absolutely. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I would make a motion to recommend that council approve the purchase of the Lemur S drone.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our final item today is a request of approval for change orders number 1 and number 3 through 5 with Petra Inc. for the new sewer collections building. And with us today is Capital Program Manager Mike Becker from the Wastewater Department. Hi, Mike.
Hi, thank you. And hello and good afternoon, Chair and council members. Today before you is a staff report for our request to approve change orders 1, 3, 4, and 5 at the new collections building. And first, a little history. Last June, As you may recall, the city approved the construction of a new sewer collections building at the north end of Julia Street. This building is intended to facilitate the sewer collections division of the wastewater department. I provided a table outlining each change order request made by the contractor. Little side note, wastewater's going to try something new this year, and as we get these change orders, we're actually going to present them to council in groups rather than wait till the very end of the project and blindside you with just one huge change order. This way, council can be kept informed of the progress of the project and some of the things that we're experiencing for some of these unforeseen costs. Change order number 1 and 4 is for the excavation and removal of undocumented fill across the site. There was a geotechnical report that was done. The contractor did incorporate that into their bid. This is for all these hidden pockets of stuff that we've been finding out there. As you may recall, this used to be a dump site. Change order number 3 is for material and labor escalations. This is a relatively new term that we're seeing more and more of in all these large-scale projects. We will be addressing these escalation costs in our contracts, but we're also going to be addressing what we're calling de-escalation costs as well, because sometimes prices do go down. And so we will have that incorporated in all our future projects. Change order number 5 is a request for conduits for a future security system at our gates. This was a request that was made by our IT department, and we figured it'd be best to go ahead and install these things before we put asphalt everywhere out there. Change order number 2 was not considered a certificate of occupancy related issue, so wastewater went ahead and rejected that. We will do that at a later date. So financially, we know that this is going to be a 2-year project. We budgeted $1.6 million this year. We'll budget the remainder of it this next fiscal year, which we're currently working on. So based on this plan, we have the budget to cover these change orders. Petra has been doing a great job out there. They have fast-tracked and accelerated, considering all the delays that I'm sure council's been hearing about on our larger scale projects. So with that, it is staff's recommendation that council approve change orders 1, 3, 4, 5 for the new sewer collections building contract with Petra Incorporated for a total of $196,024.86. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mike.
Madam Chair? Thank you. Mike, if you would just clarify for our audience, all of these projects have already come before council, they've went through a bid process, they've been approved. This is really just a matter of addressing needs that have come up and price changes, correct?
Correct. So all of these, the city has done a pretty good job of working with local contractors and developing up costs through the years. And so we make an honest attempt at forecasting what these projects will come in at. As you may recall, 2 years prior, the water department built right next to us. And so we knew that we had unsuitable material that we had to work with in the ground out there. And so part of that, we work in a little contingency budget to help it compensate, because we don't know if we're going to hit a pocket of it or a small pocket of it. Sure. And in this case, we hit 12 pockets of it. And so obviously, we don't want to build over the top of it where we get what we call differential settlement. So that's where the building settles over here quicker than over here, and structural complications arise. So best to get rid of it now and get some suitable material in there today.
Very good. Thank you.
No, I think that's good, and especially the conduit, which, I mean, is a small piece of this whole thing, but I can appreciate, I mean, people looking ahead that, oh yeah, we might need a cable, some type of, electric or fiber cable out there, so I'm glad they're thinking of that ahead and get it in place ahead of time, so the infrastructure it's cheap now compared to later, so I think that's good.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair. I make a motion to recommend that council approve change orders number 1 and number 3 through 5 with Petra Incorporated for the new sewer collections building in the amount of $196,027.86.
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll just add that I like your new process of bringing these forward as they come. So thank you for that.
I saw the look on council's face last time, so I'd like to avoid that if we could.
Fantastic. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
And that being our final agenda item and no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
Great.